top 6 business drivers you need to know. What is a business driver and why do you need to know about it? That's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to explain it and show you 6 real-world examples of business drivers. Let's do it. Hey friends, Zig here, and I'm here to make you the best network designer you can be. Our next few episodes of this YouTube show are going to be following what we call consultative leadership. Consultative leadership ties directly into the why we do what we do. Consultative leadership is all about building a business plan where you can align your technical decisions and design decisions to the business side of the house. A lot of people in this industry make design decisions and network design decisions, but they never tie it back to the business. As we cover consultative leadership, you are going to learn how to create a business plan that can be leveraged to help drive your business outcomes and technology outcomes hand in hand. This process allows you to justify every design decision with the business. Today we're talking about business drivers. So what is a business driver? A business driver, and we're not talking about like Uber or Lyft. We're not talking about that type of business driver. We're talking about something that motivates a business to do something. Business drivers are what organizations and companies and enterprises must follow. This is usually a reason a business must accomplish a specific outcome or task. I find it easiest to understand what a business driver is with an example. I think examples are critical for us to really understand and get some more context on what these definitions, what these words are. So let's have an organization. You're in some vertical, some market where you have to be compliant by some sort of regulation or standard. So that could be a HIPAA compliance, that could be a PCI compliance, that could be a federal like FedRAMP compliance, NIST compliance. There's a whole bunch of compliance standards out there. But let's just say that you have to follow one of these compliances because you work in that vertical that requires that compliance to be fulfilled. Now in that situation, if you do not comply with that compliance, your company, your organization can be fined. And eventually, if you don't adhere to that compliance, you can actually be shut down. Now, this compliance requirement, which is actually what I would call a business driver, it's driving that business to do something specific. In this case, it's driving that business to maintain a specific compliance standard, which usually will mean security controls. So because of that driver, you will most likely see in that situation security controls or security capabilities like network access control, session-based security, identity access management, data analytics, a whole bunch of security controls that you normally may not have to see if you didn't have to follow these compliance standards. Again, if you don't meet the compliance standard, you can be fined or you can be disconnected and brought down until you do meet the compliance standards. So in some verticals, you have to resubmit your approval package every year, every 6 months. So even though you're approved right now to connect and to be online, that doesn't mean you're going to be approved 6 months from now. You have to resubmit your package. You have to follow those compliance standards. You have to reassess your environment periodically. With that example, I find that is a really easy example to really push that point home. I like to call business drivers, most times, I would say 9 times out of 10, business drivers are the challenges and or the constraints that an organization must follow. And you as a designer, most of our constraints, most of our limitations on what we can do in our design decisions are because of these drivers, these constraints. In the end, to summarize this, the best way I can articulate this or terminize this is that business drivers, they are the why a business, company, or organization has to do something. Let's jump right in to some real-world examples to provide more context around business drivers. So we just talked about the first business driver example that I was going to highlight. That is, your organization is required to maintain security compliance. Again, I called out HIPAA compliance. That's healthcare compliance standards. So if you're a hospital or you're a doctor's office, you're going to have to follow some sort of HIPAA standard. And that's really around your health data for each individual person and making sure it's secure and it's not going to get compromised, etc. So because of HIPAA standards, there's some additional controls and policies and capabilities that a company organization that has to meet HIPAA standard has to follow. Another example could be PCI. So PCI is a standard that you're going to see when you're talking about any type of credit card transactions. You have to instantiate some controls around making sure those credit card transactions are secure and they're not going to get compromised or vulnerable. In those situations, you might have a point of sale system at all these different locations, and you have to ensure that when someone uses their credit card, that it's not going to get compromised. Another aspect of that kind of federal side is FedRAMP. It's a standard to require cloud to follow specific guidelines. So if I was in the government space, maybe a local state or federal government entity, and I wanted to leverage a cloud offering, I'd have to ensure that whatever cloud offering I went to go purchase or connect to was FedRAMP certified. So that was our number one. That was our first example of a business driver of a why we have to do something as a business. Our next one is going to be required to maintain application and service availability. I throw this one in here. I do see this a lot, especially now that we're moving to cloud. So as things migrate to a cloud world, which we all are dealing with, especially with the pandemic going on right now, everything is starting to move to cloud. Everyone's working from home. All of our services, all of our applications are in the cloud in some fashion. Now that could be a software as a service model, a SaaS model. That could be infrastructure as a service, where you're hosting your own infrastructure in the cloud, which you have your own applications and services on as well. So there's different models of moving things to a cloud. This driver is all about maintaining availability of those critical applications and services. And the driver behind that is if those applications and services are not online, most companies will not make money. And most companies are instantiated to either make money or to save money. Those are usually their goals. They either want to make money or they want to reduce their spend. So let's use an example, a real world example. So let's say you have a software as a service enterprise. Your entire business model is about that application that you built in the cloud and customers are leveraging it. Think of like email as a service. You have a cloud email service, you enroll into that as a customer, but what happens if that email service goes offline? Now you don't get email. That's bad, that's horrible. If you don't get email, you can't function as a business. And in turn, that SaaS company now can't function as a business. Email is a pretty critical application. And these days, all the cloud providers, all the cloud service providers for email are going to have redundant solutions. They're going to be high available. They're not going to have a lot of outages. Depending on the severity of that situation, they could actually go out of business. Not necessarily the SaaS company. The SaaS company is usually a pretty large company doing some sort of SaaS application. But really, the company that's consuming that SaaS application, if they're critical on that SaaS application, and I'll use some examples, right? So there's email as a service, there's a CRM tool, so customer relationship management tools out there. And if your customer relationship management tool goes offline for an extended period of time, I'm thinking a day, that's an extended period of time, you can't make sales. You can't get people to buy things that you're selling. And then you could potentially go out of business just because of that situation. So that's the risk, that's the impact, that's the why the business has to maintain service availability and application availability. That's the why, because if they don't, they could go offline. They could go out of business. Another good business driver, I see it all the time. It is real, it is raw. All right, so our next one's gonna be reduce cost. That is this next one. I think this is number 3. So if I'm counting, it's number 3. This is reduce cost. It's a driver. It is totally a business driver. The why. We have to ensure businesses are profitable, right? Businesses aren't going to be in business if they're not profitable. Now, there are situations where you're not for profit and maybe you're in public sector, you're the government where necessarily you're not there to make money, right? But you are there to reduce cost. You're going to reduce cost every step you can, but you're not there to necessarily make money. You're not selling products or services for like fees and a price to get that money coming in, to bring revenue in. When I say reduce cost here, it's usually going to be reduce either the CapEx expense, the capital expense, CapEx, or reduce the operating expense, OpEx. And those are different financial terminologies, business terms that you should know as a designer, but those are different expense models for a business. And as a business, when you say you want to reduce your spend, you usually want to do those two things. You want to reduce your CapEx spend and reduce your OpEx spend. Most businesses want to increase the revenue, what they're making, margins, revenue, but they also want to reduce their overall cost. So if we can instantiate some policies, some processes, some capabilities to do those things, then this is going to be a successful business driver. Again, the why, this is the why, reduce spend. And the impact is that if we don't reduce spend, we won't be profitable. We won't be around. We won't be a business any longer. This next one is increase speed to market on new solutions and capabilities. So this has become a pretty interesting business driver. Businesses that are making money are building out these solutions and capabilities, but some of them are having a hard time building them out in a rapid, fast enough pace. This is where maybe CI/CD comes in. CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous deployment, or development, depending on which perspective you're looking at for that last letter, that D. Again, you're trying to streamline your processes, your technology, and your staff to increase the time to market to get new applications, new services, new solutions, new capabilities out to your customers. And that could just be like new things to consume, new resources to consume, new services to consume, but it can also be updates to old systems, updates to old services and applications where there's new features, new capabilities, etc. The time to market, I've seen the time to market be months. So let's say it's 6 months for you to get a new service built. Just one new service, it takes 6 months. You're not going to make any money for 6 months on anything else other than what you already have. To get that new service ramped up and going, it takes 6 months. We want to shrink that time to market. We want to make that as rapid and as effective as possible. So that's where we want to shrink how much time it takes to complete the tasks. So instead of it taking 6 months to build out something, maybe it takes 3 months or 2 months or a week. And I'm telling you that this is a real situation. For example, I keep leveraging cloud, but moving to cloud gives development teams the opportunity to just build resources on the fly. Where historically on-prem teams, when a development team comes to me as a network engineer, network architect, I'm going to say, hey, well, I don't have the storage resources. I don't have the networking built. I don't have the virtual environment to build your VMs. I don't have the physical hardware, routing and switching hardware to substantiate what you're asking for. So I have to go procure those things if I don't have them, build them out, test it, and throw it into production, which could take 3 to 6 months for all of that to be completed. Whereas when we go to cloud, the capabilities that you get with cloud, for example, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to build infrastructure. It's already there. It's an infrastructure as a service. Your development team just has to go there, build out some servers, some front-end servers, develop their application, QA the application, and get it out the door. So there's a big proponent for this speed to market on new capabilities and new solutions to move the solutions and capabilities like cloud. Anything that can speed up that entire process. Again, this is a business driver. This is the why a company might go to cloud. This is the why a company might streamline their processes internally. This is why a company might have a DevOps team or a DevSecOps team internally, because they're trying to streamline how they do these workflows. All right, our next one is, so this next one's all about reducing operating and maintenance cost, O&M. So I look at operating and maintenance cost as cost can be anything. It's not just money. It's not just a money thing. And a lot of us look at cost as money, but cost can be time. It can be physical resources like storage and compute resources. Cost can also be people. Your staff members are a cost. So when you have someone focused on one task, they can't do something else. So their allotted cycles are on that task, and they can't focus on maybe a business priority. They're focusing on O&M tasks, which is not building revenue. O&M task is really overhead. It's really additional overhead on the company, on the organization. And then those staff members, those resources, let's say, are not able to be pushed on the business priority and the business outcome that business is looking for. So let's use a real life example. So let's say you're a network engineer and you are one network engineer in a company. You have to do all the work right now because you're by yourself. So in this situation, your CEO comes to you and says, hey, we're having performance issues with this application. Can you go look into it? So you go ahead in the O&M hat, right? Operations and maintenance, troubleshooting hat. You need to go and troubleshoot why they're having issues with that application. And maybe it takes you 4 hours to determine that it's a bandwidth limitation. That one of the links you guys have within your organization is 100 meg and it needs to be upgraded to 1 gig. And it's a limitation on bandwidth. You figure that out, it takes 4 hours. You go ahead and upgrade the link later that day, it's now a gig. You spent 4 hours plus troubleshooting that issue. Whereas you could have been spending 4 hours over here doing the project work that is directly tied to the business making money. Over here, you're tied specifically to triage the network, triage the application, resolve the situation at hand. Here, you're tied to building out new revenue. There's a difference. There's a 100% difference. We do need to have O&M. We can't function without O&M, but we can streamline a lot of the O&M processes, a lot of the alerting analytics. We can streamline all of that, and we should streamline all that if it makes sense to the business. So that you as a business employee, as a company, can focus on those priorities, those business lines of effort that will make you more money or reduce your spend. I like to use a couple terms on this. I like to use the term troop multiplier. I think troop multiplier really resonates. So if you have a solution, a capability, let's say, that provides your staff to redirect their focus from the O&M tasks on a daily basis to the project tasks, where they're going to make real impact on that bottom line for that company, that's what would fit in here. Those capabilities that can streamline and create a troop multiplier within your business space. That is what I like to talk about on this driver here, on this why. That's why we would shoot for and prioritize capabilities that would give us a troop multiplier. Now, that doesn't mean we're adding more staff members, and that doesn't mean we're reducing staff. I think we get clouded by that in this industry. That is not what we're talking about. If you have a team of 4 engineers today, and half of them are focused on O&M tasks, and the other half are focused on those projects that are mission critical projects, if you have a capability that allows those other 2 staff members to no longer focus on O&M tasks, and now you get 4 engineers focused on those business lines of effort, you're going to get more done as a business. So the last thing I'll say on this driver here, reduce the time on the overhead items. That's what we're talking about. If we can reduce that time and move those resources, those resources can be anything. My example was people, but those resources could be CPU cycles. Those resources could be memory, storage, VMs, servers. If we could move all of those resources that are over here to the business lines of effort, we're going to make a huge transition on this specific driver. All right, our next one is the adoption of new customers and new demands is so rapid, we can't keep up. This is a great situation to be in as a business. We have a high demand for our service, our application, whatever we produce. We have a high demand. What does that mean? That means we have a ton of customers trying to consume whatever we provide. If it's a physical product, if it's a service, whatever it might be, we have a large demand, but we cannot keep up to meet that. So think of like a service provider. So let's say you have tons and tons of customers that are trying to leverage your service provider services. And maybe you have L3 VPN circuits, L2 VPN circuits, pseudo wires, carrier supporting carrier, inter-AS options, all the 9 yards. You have all these different technical services that you offer. But the demand of those services and the scale to all those customers you have coming to you, you just can't keep up. What do? This is a business driver because you have to revolutionize how you do these new services and how you scale things out. This is where you're going to see capabilities that are going to force scalability, flexibility, on-demand ramping up of services, and on-demand ramping down of services. So think of a way to build out containers on the fly when you have a lot of load, and then reduce those containers on the fly when you have a lot less load. Situational awareness of the resources that you're leveraging and what you need, what's your load and what you need to be successful. From a service provider perspective, it could be an architectural design decision here. It could be, hey, we need to re-architect our design, our decisions. Maybe we didn't design our service provider network with pods in mind. What I mean by pod is kind of a block. Maybe we didn't have an access block in our service provider environment. Maybe we didn't have a POP block or a L3 block, an L2 block. Maybe we didn't have multiple route reflectors designed effectively in our service provider network where we're splitting the load between the different functions. Maybe all of our address families were on the same route reflectors. Maybe we have to extend those out, build out dedicated route reflectors for each address family. Maybe we need to leverage some other technologies to facilitate these needs. Maybe we need to implement traffic engineering tunnels. Maybe we need to migrate from MPLS to segment routing. These are all things that would be driven by this business driver. This business driver right here is the why we would be leveraging these other options to be successful. Never once in this entire process today did we talk about solutions, vendor-specific solutions. Never once did we start solutionizing. Everything must be tied back to the business. Every technical decision, every design decision has to be tied back to the business. We did business priorities on our last show. This is business drivers, and it's extremely important that you know this stuff and that you can articulate and identify these drivers when you're talking to your customers, when you're talking to your stakeholders in your organization. These drivers are going to tell you why you need to do something. This process that we're covering, the consultative leadership process, is a tried and true process. When we conduct this correctly, your organization, your company, your customers are going to have a business plan that they can leverage for years. Nothing in this session, nothing in this show was complex. Nothing required a bunch of technical depth for you to be able to do this. This is easy, and it's truly just consulting. Hey friends, that's going to wrap up today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. We went through a number of business drivers. Again, those business drivers are the why an organization, a company, a business needs to do something. It's the why. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on all the socials. You can always email me at zig@zigbits.tech. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and then also hit that bell so that you're notified when we create new content. We are creating a new YouTube video every single week. So keep your eyes peeled. We will have new YouTube videos every week for you to consume. And if you follow the podcast, we have a new podcast episode every week as well. So that's two new pieces of content weekly for you to consume. All right, my friends, until next time, bye for now.